Hey guys, we're going to talk about regrouping today. I really want you to think about regrouping, especially with mixed numbers. We've had some difficulties with it, okay? So I'm going to start out with explaining a couple different ways, but first we're going to review one way that I've talked about in class, and then I'm going to show you another way that I haven't talked about in class. So we're going to view with 2, 4, and 2/8 minus 1 and 5/8. Remember, we've talked about this as in looking at it as in two different problems, our whole numbers and then our fractions. So if we look at our fractions, 2/8 minus 5/8 we cannot do because 2/8 is less than 5/8, just like normal subtraction. So we have to borrow from our 3 and regroup that whole number that we're going to take away. We have to regroup it with our fraction. So I'm going to bring it over here to be 1 and 2/8 minus 5/8. Now when I'm doing this, I have to make it into an improper fraction for me to be able to subtract it from 5/8. So I do 8 times 1, which is 8, plus 2 gets me 10, which is 10/8. And then I subtract that 10/8 from 5/8, and that gets me 5/8. Now that I'm done with subtracting my fractions, I can move on to my other kind of problem, which is my whole numbers, and I subtract those. So I get 3 minus 1, which gets me 2. So I have 2 and 5/8 as my answer. We're going to do that one more time for a good example. I'm going to do, let's do the problem 2 and 1/4 minus 1 and 3/4. So I'm going to do just what I did up here. I notice that I cannot subtract 1/4 from 3/4 looking at my fractions. So I automatically know I have to take from my whole number a whole number. I'm going to bring that whole number over here, 1 and 1/4, and I'm going to subtract that from 3/4. So remember, I'm looking at this as if it's two different problems, my whole numbers and my fractions. So now I have to make this into an improper fraction. So I multiply my 4 times my 1, which gets me 4, plus my 1, which is 5. So I get 5/4 minus 3/4. And when I do that, I get 2/4. So now I have this. 1 minus 1 is 0. So I know I'm not going to have to bring anything over here. And if you want to simplify, which is dividing the top and the bottom by the same number, you can simplify, guys. And this will become 1/2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 4 divided by 2 gets me 2. 1/2 is my answer. The most important part of this problem was the borrowing. Was the fact that I took from my whole number another whole number. Okay? Now we're going to look at it in a little bit of a different light. We're going to look at it, instead of making it into a mixed number, let's automatically make our whole number into a fraction. So to do that, I'm going to actually erase this bottom problem. And we're going to look at the top problem again, but we're going to look at it a different way. So I'm going to use that top problem. 4 and 2/8 minus 1 and 5/8. Now once again, I'm going to look at them as if they're two kind of different problems, my whole numbers and my fractions. Okay? So with my whole numbers, with my fractions, 2/8 minus 5/8, I can't do that. 5/8 is larger than 2/8, and I can't do that. So I have to borrow from my whole number. Now it's kind of like when this whole number crosses this little line that I've made, it has to become a fraction. So to do that, this 1 has to become a fraction. Well, I want to use 8 because 8 is my common denominator already. And the whole number of 8 would be 8 and 8/8. Because remember, if you break that up into 8 pieces, that whole number, you have to have all 8 pieces for it to equal a whole again. So now I take my 8/8 and I'm going to add it to my 2/8. And that's going to get me 10/8. And I have to subtract my 10/8 from my 5/8. I cannot draw 8s on this, guys. Sorry. So 10/8 minus 5/8 is going to get me 5/8. That's a pretty good 8. Once I've done that, I now officially need to subtract my whole numbers, which is 3 minus 1, which gets me 2. So I have 2 and 5/8. The only thing I did differently in this problem, guys, was making my 1 into 8/8 and adding it to my 2/8 instead of making it into a mixed number and then into an improper fraction. Okay? Only thing I did differently. And you can do both of those. So let's do another problem with that way. Let's do sorry, one moment. Let's do 2 and 1/3 minus 1 and 2/3, which I think we did last time. Now, remember, it's kind of like we have this imaginary line. Okay, so I have my fractions that I have to subtract. I already know that 1/3 is less than 2/3, so I have to borrow from my 2. This 1, now I'm going to make into a fraction. It's like it has to be a fraction when you come on the other side, and I'm going to make it into 3/3. Because I have, let's imagine it's a candy bar. I have one whole candy bar, and I've split it up into 3. For me to say that I ate the whole candy bar, I have to eat all 3 pieces, so 3/3. And I'm going to add that to my 1/3. And that's going to get me 4/3. And I'm going to subtract that from my 2/3. And that is going to get me 2/3. And we do 1 minus 1, and that's 0, and I can't simplify this. So I just have 2/3 as my answer. 2/3 is my answer. Good job, guys, working with those. Now I'm going to show you actually one other way. And remember, once you find out which way you really like, please keep doing it. And if you need to watch the video again to kind of figure out how to do that way, watch this video as many times as you need to. That's what it's here for. Okay? I'm going to show you one other way. We're going to start with that first problem, which is 4 2/8 minus 1 5/8. 1 5/8. And now instead of regrouping, I'm actually just going to make them into fractions, improper fractions, automatically. So I don't have to think of this as 2 problems. I can think of it as one whole problem. So to do that, I have to do 4 times 8 and then plus 2. I already know that 4 times 8 is 32. And then I'm going to add 2, so it's going to get me 34/8. 34/8. And I'm going to subtract that from 8 times 1, which is 8. Add the 5, gets me 13/8. And now I just subtract them. 34 minus 13, so I'm going to do that over here. 34 minus 13. 4 minus 3 gets me 1. 3 minus 1 gets me 2, and it gets me 21. And I have 21/8. Now, this is an improper fraction because my numerator, my top number, is bigger than my denominator. I cannot leave it as an improper fraction for an answer. I have to make it into a mixed number. To do that, I have to divide. So I'm going to divide. How many times can 8 go into 21? So let's let 8, 16, 24. Well, 24 is larger than 21, so I can't do that. So it's 8, 16, so it's times 2. 8 times 2 gets me 16. I subtract 21 minus 16, and I get 5. Okay? So now I look at my 2 up here, and I have my 5. My remainder becomes my numerator, and I keep my denominator the same as my improper fraction. So this equals 2 and 5/8. So instead of having to regroup, I looked at what I have. I made them into both improper fractions, and I subtract those improper fractions and made them into a mixed number. Let's do that one more time with a different problem. So let's extend the page, and let's do 2 and 1/2. Let's do the same one. Minus 1. Actually, just kidding, let's not make this 1/2. Let's make this 2 and 1/3 minus 1 and 2/3. So I look at this and I already know I cannot subtract these fractions. So I immediately am going to make it into an improper fraction instead, because I've decided I don't want to regroup. I want to make it into an improper fraction. 3 times 2, 6, plus 1, 7. 7/3. So 3 times 1, 3, plus 2, 5. 7 minus 5 gets me 2/3. And now I don't have to do anything. That's my answer. 2/3 is my answer. I made them into improper fractions, subtracted, and got me 2/3. This is the one you want to use if you're getting confused by all the steps. Okay, guys, now I want you to go to the discussion that comes after this. There are some discussion questions about it. Answer one, and then you'll be done with this and you can move on to your SAB book. Thank you.